Hi, I'm Robert Hamburger. Welcome to Hamburger Stand. The World Economic Forum came out with a statement in the last few weeks that almost half of the world's wealth is now owned by just 1% of the population. Similarly, the AFL-CIO has stated that worker to CEO pay ratio is now 354 to 1 within the Fortune 500 companies. So if a worker is earning $10,000, the CEO is earning $3.5 million. Here to discuss the widening gap between the have and have-nots is Jonathan Hager. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, good to be here.
Jonathan, you're a former attorney.
Correct.
Former city council person in your town in Colorado.
Correct.
Now working with an electrical co-op.
That's right. I can add, before we get started, I'll add another little tidbit to your statistics. I listened to NPR, and they've been talking recently that the story is that President Obama and the Pope are going to bring this very topic up in their upcoming discussions. So not only is it a U.S. problem, it seems to be a world problem now with the Pope getting involved. So, but this has been something very passionate for me over the last few years. I worked at Level 3 up until 2009.
Level 3, the technology company outside of Boulder.
Correct, Level 3 Communications in Broomfield. And it always struck me that I worked just as hard as a CEO, and I was there every day. I traveled. I did all the things he did. Yet he made hundreds of millions, tens of millions of dollars compared to the salaries that we made. And I thought that wasn't fair at all. Mm-hmm. That you shouldn't allow one or two people in a company to profit at such a high level at the expense of everybody else. And in 2009, I had the opportunity to move into a co-op. The place where I work now is a co-op organization. And I believe our CEO makes $300,000 or $400,000. That and he has a nice pension plan in retirement, so there's some additional compensation, but well below the level of compensation of most Fortune 100 companies. And you'd be surprised at the difference that makes in a company. Everybody, there's a feeling of fairness and of equality that permeates throughout our staff there, and everybody feels like everybody's in it together. We're all pulling the same direction. We're all working hard, and we're all being compensated fairly, as compared to when I worked at the big corporations, where you really felt isolated and there was really no motivation to work hard.
What's at risk with the huge disparity?
You know, that's a good question. I think about that often too. When I was on city council out in Erie, Colorado, it seemed to me that the more money you had, the better services you would get, right? So people who could afford lawyers or people in big corporations could come into town and pretty much get what they wanted just by throwing their money around, throwing their weight around. But there seems to be a growing group of people in this country that can't succeed. You know, our parents, when they first started working, there was a pretty good chance you could have a very comfortable life just by working in a company. Now that's not the case. A lot of people work hard for many years and they don't have anything to show for it. Either because they've been victims of some of these corporate greed, you know, the latest mortgage scams that took advantage of a lot of people, or just the system that we've set up. And so you have this growing unrest in this country. And if you look at other countries where you have a very small population, you know, maybe less than 1%, and you have a very poor population, the other 98, 99%, we're going in that direction. Now, will we ever get there? I don't know, but we're certainly moving in that direction, and that troubles me.
What happens if we do get there? I mean, I believe that if the gap becomes too wide, it doesn't matter what the issues we're talking about. The inequity in our society is going to do our society in.
I certainly, there's going to be some kind of revolt. I don't know how it'll happen or what will happen, but you know, typically, if you look at the way our Congress functions, our government functions, it's always by crisis, right? We wait till there's a crisis. Oh my God, we got to go act now, you know.
And then there's a congressional investigation,
right?
Even though the evidence was there before anything was investigated.
You're right. Then they take 2 or 3 years to figure out what the crisis is. So, you know, for me, we could wait till the crisis is here and deal with it then, or we could start dealing with it now. And I know in Europe there's been discussion about legislation or regulations to control corporate salaries. You know, and so, of course, all those folks that are running Congress are probably part of that top 5 to 10% that own all the wealth. They're not going to be too excited about restricting salaries. So it's going to take I think, some new politicians to get in and make some changes. People who aren't owing to that corporate wealth, that are going to be independents.
I'm concerned that new politicians, new philosophies, making more rules and more laws isn't the way to go either. You know, we are already so over-regulated and told how to live in this country that I don't know that that's the answer either. And at the same time, I agree it's so out of whack that there's going to be a problem somewhere if we don't do something about it.
And I tend to agree with you. We do have a lot of regulations, and there are a lot of government policies that interfere with our lives. But we have a culture in this country years ago that if you came to work and worked hard and did a good job, you could be successful and support your family. But that doesn't exist anymore, and you have a lot of these corporate millionaires, billionaires hiding behind that myth that you can still make it, and they're riding on our backs. I mean, they basically, everybody who goes to McDonald's, spends $1 on a hamburger, is giving money to some millionaire. But they ignore the fact that those people need help. And they say, well, they can always go out and get a job and work their way to where I was. Well, that's not true. Most people who become millionaires start off as millionaires. An old joke, what's the best way to make $3 million? Start with $5 million, right? And that's very true today. It's hard for you to lift yourself up out of poverty to become a millionaire unless you're already there. I mean, that's how you become a millionaire. You start as one. You look at professional sports as sort of a microcosm, right? How many thousands of athletes are there every year that aspire to be a professional athlete? I would guess, I don't know what the statistic is, but I know it's less than 10%, probably less than 1% of them ever make it. Is that the kind of percentage we want in our economic field? We want 5% of the people to be successful and the other 95 to struggle? That's ridiculous. It's absurd.
But there are so few people in business for themselves anymore. When I grew up, a family owned the hardware store, a family owned the restaurant, a local company owned the garbage collection. Now it's waste management, or I think there's another one out there as well. I mean, everything has just been bought up, and there at the top of it is a millionaire, billionaire, and everyone else is working for a wage.
And that's one of the offshoots of this. One of the results of this is that you no longer have that local feeling. Everything's corporate. I pay for my phone and cable, and it goes to another state. I'd much rather have somebody locally doing that for me, but I don't have that option because the system and the culture we've set up has allowed greed to take over and push everybody out of the way.
Well, if you were sitting with Obama and the Pope, and they said, Jonathan, what do you think? What should we do about this? What would be your advice?
Have a 2-year investigation? Just kidding. Maybe what we should do is start looking at changing our culture, changing the way that we view our economic compensation. Is it really that entrenched in our society that we can't make any changes? I think I would tell them that I'm very frustrated as a worker with what's going on, that there's millions of people like me, and that we need to find a way to bring equality back to the system.
What might that way be?
Well, I guess
there's no changing it tomorrow, but there is a next step.
You'd have to start with limiting the way companies compensate. You'd have to give some kind of either a tax advantage or a penalty, and sort of change the culture. And I'm not against people making $5 or $10 million, but 500 or $1 billion. I mean, at what point are you successful, and what point do you become greedy? If we're a country built on religion, this isn't something that any of our religious institutions would support. For somebody to have 1% of the wealth, I mean, that's not. All religions are equality and give to the poor and take care of the needy. And we don't do that at all here. Well, we do in some respects, but there's a lot of times where we look down on the needy because they're lazy, they didn't work for what they have. And we need to change that. We need to understand that some people are workers and others have other values that they provide in life, and that we need to share.
What's at stake if we don't change?
I really think that there'll be some kind of catastrophic collapse, that there'll be strikes, or people will just start revolting, and not really a civil war, but just some sort of unrest, disobedience, that people will get tired of it. They're going to get fed up with it. They're gonna go after the people who have all the money, and I don't know what form that'll take. Maybe it'll be a political revolt where people get kicked out of office.
It might have to come to that.
It could be.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be a new kind of politician. We'll get fed up with all the stuff that's going on in Washington right now, and we'll kick all these guys out of office and bring in another group of people that will have a different vision. Similar to what Obama represented.
Thanks for being here today.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm Robert Hamburger, and this has been Hamburger's Stand.